Well, hello all, the Caretaker here. As we wrap up 2020, and we can't do that soon enough, I thought it would be fun to end the year by going back to the beginning of the Graveyard Show podcast. So what you're about to hear is the original unedited version of Graveyard Show podcast number 1, which aired on January 1st, 2009. It features my interview with Jack Messitt, the co-writer and director of the film Midnight Movie. Now, the director's cut of the film is currently streaming on Amazon Prime if you'd like to see it. What's interesting to note is that this was the only sit-down interview I've ever done with any of my guests who have appeared on the Graveyard Show podcast. So here it is in all of its glory, Graveyard Show podcast number 1. I hope you enjoy it. Podcast number 1, January 1st, 2009.
Hi, this is Jack Messitt, director of Midnight Movie. You can hear me on Graveyard Show podcast, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Graveyard.
Welcome, everyone, to the Graveyard Show podcast. I'd like to wish everyone a very happy and healthy 2009. Ironically, podcast is launching on New Year's Day. Was not originally planned, but it just kind of happened that way. I am your caretaker here in the Graveyard. Graveyard Show podcast will be available every week, Thursday night, midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. Just go on to the website, graveyardshow.com, and the podcast will be there. You can either listen to it on the website or you can download it and drop it on your iPod or any other MP3 player you may have, and you can listen to it at your leisure. It will be a weekly podcast, and it's basically all things horror. Anything that has to do with the horror genre, I will be talking about on this podcast, whether it's film, television, books, music, festivals, anything. I also invite you to send me emails. The email address is caretaker@graveyardshow.com. That's caretaker@graveyardshow.com. I welcome your thoughts. If you have any suggestions, if you have any comments, please feel free to send them to me at caretaker@graveyardshow.com. As you heard at the top of the show, Jack Messitt, who is the director and co-writer of Midnight Movie, will be joining me. His film, Midnight Movie, will be out on DVD this coming Tuesday, January 6th. It's available for purchase, available for rental. There is also a website for the movie. It is midnightmovie.com, and I do have a link on my website that you can just click and it'll take you right to it. It's a great interactive website that gives you cast and crew information, as well as behind-the-scenes information, trailers, all kinds of fun stuff. You should definitely check it out. I really encourage on this website to support independent filmmakers, especially in the horror genre. I really want to encourage anyone out there who either has an independent project, anyone who has a film that's completed, anyone who is looking to try to get promotion for their independent projects, please feel free to email me and let me know. And I'll do whatever I can to try to get the word out. Whether it's a film or a book or anything along those lines. Because there are a lot of projects, there are a lot of products out there, and it's really easy to get lost. So if you do have a project, and please feel free to email me. Just put on the email subject line that it is a independent project or something along those lines so it can catch my attention. The Graveyard is open for business, and there's nothing but green grass all around. However, if you listen closely, you'll hear my workers in the background getting my very first plot ready. This is going to be for my first guest. Jack Messitt is the director and co-writer of Midnight Movie, which will be released on DVD this Tuesday, January 6th. Midnight Movie won 2 awards at the Chicago Horror Film Festival back in September of 2008. It won Best Cinematography and the Jury Award for Best Feature Film. This is Jack's directorial debut. And his background is director of photography and camera operator, and some of his credits include American Idol, Bones, and The Amazing Race. And Jack is sitting 3 feet away from me right now, and he joins me in the graveyard. Thanks for being here, Jack.
Thank you so much for having me.
Keeping in tune with Amazing, I want to read a couple of quick reviews of your movie that are on your site. Some of are on your site, and some I came across. The Star Tribune of Minneapolis, St. Paul says, the film delivers 80 minutes of jokes, jolts, and jumps, and the technical specs are sharp. Dread Central calls Midnight Movie a gory and fast-paced good time. MovieWeb.com says Midnight Movie is a true modern-day horror classic. And Fangoria says Messitt and company are clearly working hard to make a solid product instead of just exploiting the genre for a quick cash-in. So with all that, having done the screenings, DVD's about ready to come out, what are your emotions right now?
Well, I'm really just excited that it's going to finally really get out there. We had a limited theatrical run, but it was 10 cities, which is awesome, but certainly everybody couldn't get to those 10 cities. So for me, just, with as well as it's been received, to get it out to everybody that's the exciting part for me.
For those few people that really don't know what Midnight Movie is about, why don't you tell us what the synopsis is?
Midnight Movie is basically about a group of kids that go to a midnight showing of this old black and white horror film, and what they don't know is that the director of the film, that failed miserably in its own time, found a way to finally make his film scary by enshrining his soul into the film. So it allows the killer in his film to come out and start stalking those in the theater.
This was not a script that you had originally written. This is a project that you had come aboard, or you came into as when it was still in the pre-production stages or still in the script stages?
Yeah, it was the script had already been greenlit by Bigfoot Entertainment, and they had lost their director because of he's had to step away for some reason. And when they started searching again, I read the script and really thought the script could be much better. So I went in and just pitched my ideas of what I would do to change it, really. Yep. And instead of going in and saying, oh, I love it, I love it, I love it, I said, really, I think you're missing the mark here. And they called me a few days later and said, you're the guy for the job. On the website, you have a director's blog, and on it you had mentioned that story, you'd written about that story, and you said that it did take them a few days to get back to you. The question is, were you sweating it, and did you think that maybe you made a mistake by being so honest, or did you feel like you did the right thing? I've been a director of photography for a long time, so it was already going to be a leap of faith for them to tap me for this anyway. And my philosophy, even as a DP, when I go in and have interviews about shooting something, is to give them my honest take about whatever they're doing. And as a DP, they say, well, what do you think? What are your thoughts? And I say, this is what I think it should look like, before knowing what they think it should look like. And to me, if they match up, it's going to be a good pairing. And if they don't, it's either I really have to change my philosophy of what this film is, or we just don't do it. Roughly about how long do you remember taking you to rework the script? And is there anything that you can tell us that either you needed to change, or maybe what you did, what you brought to the script? I think I signed on to the script in July, and I worked with the original screenplay writer, Mark Garbett. And one of the biggest things that I thought needed to happen was with the movie in the movie. And it's called The Dark Beneath now, but at the time, it was this kind of mishmash of images, kind of like The Ring. And I felt that anybody who goes into a movie and sits there for maybe 2-3 minutes and sees this just mishmash of nothing, even if it's kind of weird and odd and scary, after a couple minutes, you're gonna like, all right, well, this is going nowhere, and I'm out of here. And so I didn't think the movie could sustain itself, and so we started working on basically writing a whole new movie. And we ran through a bunch of different eras of horror, and for a good while we were running with like a 1930s kind of thing. And then I just kind of sat back and thought it's like 1930s is like, those kind of movies are not scary to audiences today, but movies like from the late 60s, early 70s, I think still really hold up today. So I broke away from working with Mark for a little while and basically revamped the movie in the movie to incorporate a little bit more of that feel. And then, so The Dark Beneath was basically born. Did you find it hard doing the movie within a movie plotline? Was it difficult
at all, or did it kind of just come naturally for you?
The movie was really kind of a lot of fun. I mean, because you only see bits and pieces of it, so you can take great leaps in what happens from A to B, kind of a thing. And so I wanted it to have the feel of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I wanted it to feel very different than like Midnight Movie as a whole. I wanted, when that came to the screen, I wanted everybody to instantly know, okay, you're watching the movie in the movie. So that's why we did black and white. It's also a fairly static movie, meaning that the camera's locked down, whereas the rest of the movie is handheld. So there's that feel as well. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And you know, when it came to actually shooting the movie in the movie, it was really such a small portion of our shooting schedule. We basically shot the movie in about a day and a half. So to me, it kind of had more of that feel of what it would have been in the 60s on a run and gun kind of thing. It's like it was pretty minimal as far as coverage and things like that.
On the website, midnightmovie.com, for those of you that don't know it, you did write an interesting story about how you created the weapon for the killer. For those that don't know what the weapon is, can you describe what it is, and then can you tell a story about how you created it?
Sure. The weapon is basically it's a corkscrew knife, and the origins of it, as I said earlier, when we were going through all the different eras of horror films for the movie and the movie, that would, in essence, give the killer whatever weapon he's going to have, and I wanted it to tie into the movie, in the movie. So when we were in a 1930s kind of theme, he had a fire poker, and we ran with that for a little while, but ultimately it wasn't all that scary, and it felt like it'd sort of been done before, even though I'm not sure it has. But basically everything under the sun's been used to kill people in movies, in horror movies. It's,
yes.
You've got the machete, the axe, you name it, it's been done.
Yeah.
So I wanted something to just really stand out and be a signature for Midnight Movie itself. And so, when we updated it to a 60s, 70s, I kind of like started working, from scratch again to find a weapon. And it was really difficult. And then one day, one of the producers, Jacques, had emailed me and said, well, how about a corkscrew knife? And it's when it dawned on me, I'd written a serial killer novel when I was in college. And the guy in the movie had this basically metal cone that he would, with a sharp point, that he would puncture into somebody's chest. And then the outside of the cone was this razor sharp edging that, as he pulled it out, would basically slice as it came out. So he'd have this big plug of flesh. So what I did was I took Jacques' idea of a corkscrew knife, and I, incorporated it into this idea that was already 15 years old, but, really had never been seen.
Now, the movie within the movie, The Dark Beneath, was done in black and white, and it's more of an homage to the 60s and 70s. Midnight Movie obviously shot in color, and it certainly has a feel of an 80s slasher movie. Did you feel an influence from 80s slasher movies, and were you concerned that maybe you might get caught in the copycat mode of an 80s slasher film?
Well, it was certainly influenced by the 80s slashers. I mean, I think when you see it, that's pretty evident. But I wanted it to have the fun feel of the 80s slasher films, which I think the movies in our theaters today have kind of gotten away from that, especially in the Saw, and torture kind of genre. Yeah. And so I really wanted to do something that was, I grew up on the 80s slasher films, so I wanted to get back to fun horror, but at the same time, I didn't want it to be, campy, ridiculous. I wanted it to have a bit of an edge that, that I thought those films had for me at the time. Even though looking back, they might not be quite as scary as I remember, but, really those are the iconic images when you think about horror films.
Sure. So now the script gets greenlit, everything's a go. You walk into pre-production and you go into a casting session as a first-time director. What was it like?
Well, casting for this film was very interesting because we're a non-SAG film, and while we're in Los Angeles with tons of actors, that still limited our pool significantly on who we could cast. And so what we were doing is we're looking for the diamonds out there that haven't been discovered, and I think we found a ton of them. It was so much fun to give people pages to read from and to see these characters brought to life, and the people that we cast really embodied exactly who was in the script. It was really a great experience.
And how long of a shooting schedule did you have?
We shot for 21 days, which is it's not a lot of time, especially with a horror film where you're dealing with, major effects on set and, gallons of blood and, in addition to the fact that it's not like a talky film. There's very few scenes where people are just sitting around, so it's the pace of it is very quick, and in doing so, there's a lot of scenes to cover.
Did you find yourself doing a lot more rehearsing, or were you trying to just get as much in the can as you could?
It was a bit of both. I think we rehearsed kind of the scenes or shots that needed rehearsing, but again, with that short of a shooting schedule, we didn't have time to do a ton of rehearsing on the set. We did a bit before. I had meetings with all of our actors before, but really the casting wasn't set until about 10 days before we started shooting, so there wasn't a ton of time for that either. And when you're working on that kind of schedule, at our budget, you have time to do each kind of effect once, maybe twice. But it's kind of one of those, when you have an explosion of blood, it gets all over the room, and it's going to take an hour or so to clean it up to do it again. And you look at your watch and you say, okay, I guess we're going to live with that one, or if it was horrible, you'd say, okay, let's do it again, and kind of start sweating because there you just lost an hour.
Sure. Your first day on the set, did you lose a lot of sleep the night before, or were you constantly running through things? And what was it? What was day one? What was shooting?
Day one was actually the very end of the movie. It's kind of a chase sequence between the killer and the remaining characters, without giving too much away. And it was done that way purely because those were the two. We had 2 days where we could be out on the location ranch, and so it was like, you hate to start with the end because you'd like the actors to be able to kind of figure out who their characters are before you see them in the ultimate peril kind of thing. But the actors really they stepped up, and I think it shows.
Did you find yourself shooting scenes differently than you originally envisioned them, either when you were writing the script?
As you write the script, you kind of have a movie in your head, and then you get to location, and that movie changes a bit to the actual place that you're going to be shooting. And you also have scenes in your head that are just huge, and then you start realizing, okay, I've got 6 hours to shoot this scene. Okay, it can no longer be huge, so how do I compress it and still make it effective? And I look at Midnight Movie, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out, but at the same time, there were big sequences that we didn't have the time or budget to shoot them. So you would hope that in a sequel situation or something like that, that we have a little bit more budget, a little bit more time, so we can make those sequences, everything that I imagine.
What kind of hours? Were you limited to a certain amount of hours every day shooting, or did you guys just try to get everything done?
It was a bit of both. I think we tried to limit it to about 12 hours, of shooting a day.
Which is not a lot of time.
It's not a lot of time, especially when you add lunch in there and,
Sure.
This, that, and the other. It's not a long shooting day. I know that we went to 14 or probably a 16-hour day in there somewhere. But for the most part, we stayed to our 12-hour schedule because, we're low-budget film, and like overtime is expensive.
Wow. Well, for those that are looking at getting in the industry, you'll find out soon enough what a 12-hour day is like versus a 20-hour day. Trying to cram in 8 pages a day, I would probably be about 7 pages a day, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's about right. And some days you do less than that, obviously, because you have big effects or things like that. And some days you do a lot more. And I know we had 2 days in the movie theater itself where everybody's kind of watching the movie, and we had 2 cameras running and cranked out just as much dialogue as possible in those 2 days, so we had time to do the kills the way they're supposed to be done, because the kills always take more time.
With the movie screen, how did you do that?
That was one of the big technical issues in pre-production, is how we're going to do it. And green screen was an issue. We thought about green screen, we thought about blue screen, we thought about actually projecting the movie in the movie, but since we started basically shooting the movie in the end sequence, we didn't have time to get any of that printed and edited and everything by the time we were in the theater. So basically what we did was called a luminance key, and we've got this big white screen, and we just blew it out with really bright lights, and we're able to kind of go in and cut it out later.
Having worked on sets, I know that green screen and blue screen are very light sensitive in terms of you have to light it right for it to work right. Was it the same way with that? Were you constantly?
It actually, it was the best solution for us because not only were we able to get something that we could cut out easily later, but it also served as a lighting source for us that was a really organic lighting source. So when you see everybody lit in the audience, they're basically lit by the screen itself, as they would be in the theater.
It's also a great time saver.
Yeah, it really couldn't have worked out better.
Wow.
I had 2 DPs on it because of the shutdown.
Okay.
But the first DP, Clyde Smith, and I, when we came up with that decision, it worked out perfectly for us.
Do you think your experience as a DP really helped you work a set as the director? Do you think it really you came into it already having had set experience as a crew member? And the DP obviously is a very important position, but now when you move up to director, now you have a lot to undertake. Do you think that really did help you in a scenario like this of directing a horror movie on a very short schedule, budget crunch, the whole thing?
Well, I think my experience as a DP, it made me prepare in a way that some other directors may not. And it also, I wasn't afraid of anything technical. So, having those discussions with the effects guys, both the on-set guys and the post guys, they knew I knew what I was asking for. They knew I knew what I was, what I was talking about, and I could have conversations with them that we didn't have to go through, effects 101 in order to have these conversations. We could already be talking at a level that, that saved a lot of time.
Sure.
And again, the on-set experience was not new to me. So that first day of, wide-eyed director going, oh, how do I start? The only thing is, everyone looking at you again, and saying, okay, what are we doing? And then it's just about saying, all right, this is my list of shots. I'm not a huge storyboarder outside of the action sequences. But I shot list everything, so I know that this particular scene is most likely going to have 3 or 4 shots, and so it helps us schedule things and make our day in a way that some directors might not be as prepared to do. And even in scheduling, it's like I know how much time X amount of shots are going to take, and I knew when I asked my DPs, for this particular shot, I knew what I was asking for. I knew the time it was going to take, and if it was going to be kind of an expensive shot, meaning it was going to be a big, time eater, I knew it going in, and then I could then make choices later saying, all right, I know this is an expensive shot and we don't have the time for it, so I'll cut this one, add this small one, and then we'll be able to leave the scene and have what we need. Having
a background as a DP, so you had 2 DPs plus yourself, so 3 DPs that were working on this film. Did you find yourself, as the director, finding yourself gravitating towards the camera like you would as a DP, or were you just so busy with everything that was going on? Did you just say, I'm not even going to get that, I don't even have to worry about that?
Well, when I was initially tapped for the project, everyone asked me, because my friends know I'm a cameraman, so they said, are you going to shoot it as well? And I said, listen, being a DP and being a director, they're both full-time jobs. And you can't do them both and do them both justice. So really on set, I was really particular about, the basic coverage that we were talking about and whatnot. But again, with the collaborative effort, it's like you say, this is what I'm looking for, and then you walk away, start working with the actors or looking at props or whatever, the thousands of other things that you have to do, and they take your idea and they run with it. And again, they made my ideas much better, and my camera operator, Greg Collier, did an awesome job with, again, taking the frames that I would describe and adding his own ideas to them and just making them better. It was a lot of fun. Having won the Chicago Horror Film Festival Award for Best Cinematography certainly says a lot too. Yeah, and again, as a DP, it really that meant a lot more than most for most directors, because we really wanted our movie. We were a low budget movie, but we wanted it to feel like a bigger budget movie, and so we shot 35 millimeter, and we tried to do everything the right way, and put all the money that we had up on the screen. And that was,
Well, that was the interesting thing about what I read on Fangoria's review of the film. The last thing that they had said, when Jack Messitt gets a big budget, watch out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really flattering, especially with all the comments about the technical. And again, a small movie, but we tried to do everything the right way. We did our post effects at Pixel Magic, who did 300.
Okay.
And, again, we wanted every dollar that we spent to make it to the screen. And in making those choices, people have seen the difference.
No, you were smart. You put the budget on screen as opposed to a lot of movies that a lot of the money goes to the behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, it didn't go in my pocket, I'll tell you that. So, so maybe the next one, but yeah, my salary was small, so we could
get it done. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
The special effects department. Can you discuss your relationship with the effects department, and can you also give some advice to the young filmmakers out there, so when they do get into, when they are finally working as a professional director, what they need to do in order to convey what they're looking for?
Well, our on-set effects were done by Lunar Effects, and Brian Hicks was the head of that. And the thing about effects is that they eat time like you wouldn't believe. And in order to kind of make the most of your time, you have to be really well prepared. So well into early pre-production, I'd storyboarded out every sequence that we killed somebody in. And so I knew exactly what angles I was shooting, so then I can go to Brian and say, it needs to work from this angle, it doesn't have to work from this angle. And so you design the effects for exactly how we were going to shoot it. And I think that saved a tremendous amount of time, because if you weren't as specific and you got on set and you're kind of like, okay, well, I want to be here, and then you look and you're like, I've got tubes all over the place, or I'm seeing the gag, and because we were so prepared ahead of time, again, the shots that we had planned for worked, because we built these, all the prosthetics or whatever to work for the shots that we wanted.
Staying with the effects, were you conscious of the violence and the gore? It's one thing to write it, it's another thing to see it and do it. Were you conscious of saying, maybe this is too much, maybe this is not enough, walking that fine line? Because I have to say, there are payoffs on this movie, but it's certainly not what I've seen in a lot of contemporary movies, where it's all gore all the time, blood everywhere. It's done to pay off, but it's also done respectfully too. You walk both lines.
Yeah, it was. We were very conscious about the gore level in Midnight Movie, and for two reasons. One, I didn't want it to be. I mean, there's been a lot of movies out there where, like, the first kill you see is at such a level that you're like, well, how do I top this one? And they constantly try to top it throughout the movie, and yet it's basically a plateau. And I wanted Midnight Movie to have a nice rise with the kills. So as the movie went on, the kills got bigger and more satisfying. So the other way that helped us was that because of our budget, we couldn't do every kill, in this huge marquee way. So it's just you don't have the time or the money. And what I devised was that we would set up the movie kind of like the history of horror. And in the very beginning, you basically see before a massacre and after, but you don't see the massacre itself. And then with each successive kill, as the history of horror kind of goes on, you basically got a little bit more gory and a little bit more gory. And up until the point of like today's films, and we do touch on a little bit of the torture thing at, toward the end of the film. But oddly enough, that particular scene has the least amount of gore, I think, out of any of them, but is, to me, one of the more, kind of hide your eyes, bury your head into your boyfriend's shoulder kind of moments. And yet, if you're watching it, there's very little gore, but it feels like you see everything. And to me, that's the power that a lot of filmmakers aren't using today. What you don't see and what your brain fills in the blanks for is much more terrifying than anything that we could actually come up with to show you.
Sure. See, again, going back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, people think that it's a bloody movie. In reality, it's really not. It's intense, like Midnight Movie is. And that's one of the things that stuck out in my mind was the intensity of when the killer is there. Not only is he scary as hell with that mask that he wears, but one of the things I think that you did that was so effective was that the movie wasn't cut in a quick music video way, and when you're with the killer, you're in a confined, and you keep the camera on him, and you see him, and you're there. You're with the characters trying to get away from him, and he is like a Michael Myers or a Jason, where he's coming, and you can't get away. Can you discuss why you did shoot it that way and not the other way where it's quick cuts?
You know, again, I think in the style of more of the 80s slashers, and I think what made them terrifying is that they were kind of like that constant presence that would just lumber constantly toward you, and you just couldn't get away from him. Whereas if you do this really quick cutty kind of thing, it's like it feels more like a trick. Mm-hmm. And you know, I had a few sequences planned where you'd see the killer and he would just disappear and come up behind someone else, and unfortunately those were cut more because of time restrictions than anything else. But we had the luxury with our killer, because he's a bit supernatural, to kind of appear and disappear at will. And as he does this, as when he appears and he's lumbering toward you, it's like, how do you get away from this guy? He's just this locomotive that is constantly just going toward you.
What was the energy like with the actors on set?
Being on set with all these actors was really a lot of fun, because there were so many characters, and I mean, you know, actors, these guys were characters, you know, and it was a lot of fun to be with them, and you know, I really wish I had more time to just kind of kick around with them, because we had so much to do in our days. They really bonded together, you know, offset, because when you're killing somebody, everyone else kind of has time to sit and mill around. And unfortunately, I didn't have as much of that time as I would have liked. But you know, we had a great group of actors that I can't wait to work with again.
Now, were you able to have a video village on this, or was it so you were able to actually have a monitor section where you could sit and? Yeah,
we had a video village, but you know, we were shooting film, so it's not like when you're shooting video, you don't see it exactly how it's going to be. It's kind of this scratchy, you know, it's in color, but not a great image.
Sure.
You know, and it's just there to judge framing and whatnot, and I'm a big believer of, you know, getting away from video village when you know, when you can, you know, if you're not looking at, okay, what's this effect going to be, but when you're dealing with, you know, more of an emotional scene, is getting right by the camera, getting away from that, so you can really feel what the actors are giving you.
It is interesting, because that was going to be my follow-up question, because I think a lot of directors nowadays use that as a crutch, and just a lot of them just stay there and don't move. And so basically in your situation, you were on set, you were next to the camera for most of it.
Yeah, and I try to get video village as close to the action as possible.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than, you know, screaming 3 rooms away, no, move your head left, you know, or whatever. It's like, it just totally takes the actors out of the moment. So, you know, even if I was watching at video village when I had notes, it's like I got up and always went in and talked to them, you know, and, you know, face to face, because that's to keep that emotional bond, you know, between the actor and their character is really important. And again, the shouting from 100 yards away just breaks that completely.
Yeah. So after production, did you kind of sit back after principal and just say to yourself, wow, I was prepared for X, but I wasn't prepared for Y. What did you learn from this experience, I guess is?
Making a movie, I mean, I've been through the production experience a lot as a DP. As a director, the biggest difference is that everybody's looking to you for the answers. As a DP, you always, you know, you throw ideas out, but ultimately it's someone else's, you know, choice on what gets done. Whereas this, everyone was throwing the questions at me, and it was emotionally draining, because you're constantly having to either come up with ideas or you know, like everyone's looking to you. Once we finished shooting, I went to Spain for about 2.5 weeks and tried to decompress a little bit, to Spain and southern France, and then we posted in the Philippines, because that's where our investors from, and I basically jumped right in the editing room, was there for about 5 weeks, and came away with a cut. And we did a bunch of test screenings, and got some feedback on what was working, what wasn't. That was very helpful. And a lot of times you know what's not working, and yet you kind of want confirmation that it's not working, and you get it. And then we did one additional shooting day where I kind of got some some of the gravy for the film. You know, it's like things were working, but I was missing a beat or two here or there, and so we didn't reshoot anything, but we just shot some additional scenes, and I think having, you know, the cut and seeing it with the test audience, and then going back and being able to pick up some things that I felt were missing was, you know, it was really lucky that we had kind of saved the money in order to do it. And because we're a low budget, everyone goes, well, why didn't you just shoot HD? You know, and my answer to that is, one, I wanted it to have a bigger look than that, and the look that we got, you can't get on HD. You know, unless it's even maybe one of the high-end HDs now. You know, because there's some really decent-looking HD cameras, but that it wouldn't have saved anything money-wise.
Yeah. Now, Bigfoot financed the film, but you need to get a distributor. One of the terms I'm sure people have heard is negative pickup. Can you describe what that is for those that don't? You know,
after you go through the, you know, the pain and suffering of making your movie, and you finally have it where you want to show it to an audience and you think it's done, we had a distributor screening. So we packed a theater of about 400 people, and including, like, I don't know, 25 distributors, and you basically just watched the movie with them. And at the end of the film, you kind of look at them, say, you know, do you like it? Are you interested? And we got a really nice response of people that, you know, wanted to bring the screeners back to their company and show it to other people. And then you kind of wait for offers to come in, and then decipher, okay, which one's going to be best for, you know, for getting the movie out there, and for, you know, monetarily what's going to work for you. And you know, we partnered up with Peace Arch, and they've been absolutely wonderful. And you know, the DVD comes out January 6th, so I think we've done all right. You were able to do some limited screenings. How did those go? The theatrical screenings in November went really well, and you know, we're a small movie, so you know, getting the word out about the movie was really important to us, and no better way to see this film than with a big audience in a theater. And Bigfoot was really great about helping us, you know, get this distribution and get the word out, and they were all very pleased with how it went, and I think that just helped with the, you know, create a little bit more buzz about the movie, and hopefully, you know, everyone who went and saw it's gonna now purchase it. And I'd mentioned at the top that Midnight Movie won 2 awards at the Chicago Horror Film Festival for Best Cinematography, and the big one was the Best Picture. Had to have been special for you being from there. What was that like? Yeah, you know, we debuted there really. We had our distributor screening, but this was, you know, basically our big premiere. And for me, to have it in Chicago was absolutely awesome, because I'm from there. You know, my family and a bunch of friends were able to come. And then when we won Best Cinematography, it was, you know, as a DP, it meant a ton to me. But then winning, you know, Best Feature Film, you know, I couldn't have dreamed of a better way to start, you know, showing this film than that. And you know, I'm still shocked. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and you know, I owe a lot to those guys and helping get the word out about the film. Where's the award? Actually, the award's in my office right now, and excellent. It's being displayed proudly. Great, as it should be. For the DVD release, for those that can't wait to get it, and those that are interested in seeing it, will it be any extras? Yeah, there's a ton of extras on it, and I had a really big hand in how these extras were put together, and I didn't want it to be some fluffy thing that's basically another trailer. I wanted it to really be a behind the scenes of, you know, how we did things, and even though we're on a low budget, it's like how the effects were done, especially the post effects with Pixel Magic. You know, you really get to see the before and you get to see after, and like the luminance key on the movie screen, you'll see what the actors were really looking at, and you know, things like that. And you know, because I wanted it to be a cool experience, and I wanted it to be something that when they click on it and watch it, that it's something that they felt like they got something out of it. Sure. And I think there's, you know, 30, 40 minutes of these behind the scenes, but they're all, you know, informative and quality stuff. Which is great, because again, for the kids that are in college and high school that are looking to get involved in professional filmmaking, that's what I would have wanted to have seen if DVDs were available back then, back in the Stone Ages. Yeah, well, I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, reading, Fangoria or Starlog or one of the other magazines about movies at the time, and I always craved the behind the scenes of how did you really do something, and I don't want to bust every myth out there, but at the same time I want to give people something that's worth watching.
Are there any plans for a sequel?
The plans for the sequel all depend on how well the original does.
Okay.
And while it's gotten a lot of acclaim, we'll see if people are buying it, and hopefully everyone does get out and buy it, and we can do another, because I think the possibilities of what we can do with this are really, they're wide open, and if we could get the same or a bit bigger budget to really do it some justice, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Back before you were doing this professionally, I remember reading something that you talked about in terms of you had watched, I believe it was Psycho on TV, and how it really left an influence on you. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I remember being at home, and I think it's WGN or somebody was playing Psycho, and I started watching it because it starts off pretty innocuous, and you think it's this little caper movie where this woman steals this money, and then my mom comes in, as I'm watching it, and she's driving away with the money, and you're like, oh, she sees the boss, and you're like, oh, and I'm thinking it's, I don't know what this is yet, and my mom's like, this is a scary movie, are you sure you're gonna want to watch this? And I was just like, oh yeah, come on, and she's like, okay. So, the lights are off and everyone's in bed except for me, and then the movie takes a total turn, and things become, it really, especially for its time, and when you're, I don't know, 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever I was, that's a movie that holds up, even today. So, that experience has never left me. And, the creepiness of sitting on your couch in a house that, 5 other people are sleeping in, and yet you're sitting there just shivering and looking around, and the house creaks, and you're kind of like, what's going on? That's the experience that I wanted to impart upon Midnight Movie, because that's what I remember, from my experience.
He is Jack Messitt. He is the director and co-writer of Midnight Movie, coming to DVD January 6th, this coming Tuesday. If you haven't seen it, you have to go rent it, buy it, get out there and support this movie. It is definitely worth your time. And I'd like to thank Jack for joining me in the graveyard.
Well, thank you so much.
And as I put this interview to rest, I would like to once again thank Jack for joining me in the graveyard. His film Midnight Movie comes out on DVD this Tuesday, January 6th. Please support your independent filmmaker. And I also invite you to send me your emails. That is caretaker@graveyardshow.com, caretaker@graveyardshow.com. Please send me your thoughts, your comments, and I will definitely take a look at them. And who knows, maybe some of them will even get on the air. And as you exit the graveyard, I would just like to remind you of one thing. Please, lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want anyone to get out. Until next time.